Hi, welcome to the second part of the feminist economics course lecture on Carework. Well, in this part, we will start to look to the chapter 1 of the Invisible Heart book written by Nancy Folbre. And we should start with, the characteristics and scope of the care work defined by early economists. So basically, Nancy Folbre later defines care work in more detail in her own way. But before doing that, in the first chapter, she presents the definitions of the earliest economists and some philosophers, just like John Locke, for example, Adam Smith, Malthus, and also John Stuart Mill, for example, and some later people, activists, and major, let's say, philosophers or politicians. Well, in most of these definitions, as I said, it was independent of Nancy Folbre's definition, basically. Male work is taken as a work that has certain characteristics. Famously, Adam Smith has said, it's not due to self-interest the butcher produce meat because of the charity or because they care for the people. The butchers produce meat, or carpenters produce wooden furniture, for example. They do it due to self-interest, and basically when I go to a carpenter and buy furniture, I offer something in return, and I'm actually serving to the self-interest. I'm addressing self-interest of the carpenter. This is Adam Smith's definition, and John Locke also famously says each man should have the products of his own labor, basically. But Nancy Folbre asks, is it also true for the woman? And she wrote, most of these early philosophers actually thought in case of women, things are different. And things should be different, well, especially take other things aside. If we just consider the children, well, for what self-interest are women looking for the children? Why are they performing work for the children? It's not as easy as possible. It's not possible to easily define that self-interest, at least immediately. We might think whether there is some self-interest involved in that type of work. Well, for male, they provide income for the children, which might also seem maybe something altruistic. But for men, basically, the very work itself is kind of completely lacks self-interest. There is no element of self-interest in the type of work itself. In men, at least when they work, they want something in return, maybe to care for their families, but at least in the nature of the work, they are serving their self-interest. As a result, female work, different from male work, it's first taught as not an exact type of work. It's important, but it's not an exact type of work, because the nature of the activity is different from the work. However, it might be considered important, of course, still, and the morality is necessary for the two different types of work were different from each other. So women were considered as perfectly fitting to the morality of the female type of work, and their morality was encouraged. The selflessness, altruism, caring for the others, all of these things are encouraged for the woman. on the other hand, of course, this in the type of childcare work, not the logic and basically logic and calculation, but rather the feelings are taught as the main motive, and that's why women are taught as people who are dependent to the man, and to some extent should be dependent to the man. And also, we should note, well, this type of work are basically, well, into an inferior position. Women are basically put into an inferior position, mainly because, well, men have access to the wages and the monetary income, and that at least that makes men more independent. They have more access to the market goods and commodities when they need, even when they are alone, when they are not, when they separate from their wives, and probably that also put men into control of the monetary income inside of the household. And if women want to work, that of course having child care is something that makes it difficult for the woman to work. And also the morality that follows also puts men to the top, because women are acting with their feelings, but men are self-controlled, and men are the ones who are actually have the control of the products of their labor power. But because women are selfless, altruistic, their ability to control the resources in the family is not that much developed, according to this idea, at least, according to early economists and philosophers. To some extent, also this was also mentioned in a more, let's say, not so strict terms by the later philosophers. Well, this position puts women at a much disadvantage, and as a result, basically, increasingly women start to, in 20th century, the second half of 20th century, when they are able to, increasingly women don't want to stay in this type of economic status, and they actually, instead of basically doing the care work, staying at home, caring for children, or elderly or sick people, they rather go to market. They work in a job, and they want to earn wage. But this is actually something that is not liked by conservative and let's say old school politicians and old school economists also, who think basically women are acting against their nature. But we should note that, and Nancy Wilber writes on it also in his article, that nature was to some extent also enforced on women, and the women who were not following that nature were seen as unnatural, weak, like witches, for example. And now, increasingly, the women are actually going to the male sphere. But if all women are going to the male sphere, and basically the male morality becomes dominant, the male type of work becomes dominant, which is promoting selfishness, being independent, basically commanding your product of your labor power. But the other side, I mean, this producing something for the whole society collectively, or let's say, working to make someone to recover and get well again and be member of the society, or basically grow up. What happens to this type of work? I mean, is this type of work really unnecessary? Or can this type of work be provided by people who are independent and who are thinking just their self-interest. Those are the questions actually that Master Fabre focused on in the second chapter. But as one thing we should say, actually, well, for example, she gives the famous example. I mean, women are the daughters are taken by their fathers and parents to the work to give them imagination, to have to think that they are able to work at a job where they are able to get their wages. But what about the other way around? Should we also encourage our boys, I mean the sons, to care for the children, change diapers, clean the house, I don't know, care for elderly? That's the main question here, actually. That's the question with which she ends this chapter. And in the second chapter, she goes into more detail to the nature of care work and actually how this transformation, which might actually bring, move the whole female population to the male sphere, might be actually by itself harmful for the society. And in that sense, surprisingly, Nancy Fabre is not that much, not that much is might be wrong word, but has some points that are similar to this conservative people who says actually when women are actually going to the sphere of men, this might actually be harmful for the society. But her solution is not women going back to their original sphere, but rather both spheres are shared by men and women together, because when women stay at the sphere separately, that puts them to an inferior position to the men, and they become secondary citizens, or might not even have citizen rights, basically. So it's very understandable for the woman to go to the male sphere. So rather, you should have a system putting a group of people to one sphere where basically they need to work selfless and sacrifice themselves and basically work for altruistic motives. While in another sphere, people are able to comment their product and they are independent and selfish. It's unfair, according to Nancy Fabre. Rather, both spheres should exist, and both spheres should be shared by the work in both spheres should be shared by all members of the society, according to her. And in the second chapter, basically, she goes into detail actually on, and she makes also a discussion. By the way, I mean, the argument is in no way strict necessarily, but mainly her argument is this: when we are talking about the care work, focusing on care work, both in unpaid sphere as a family member who is doing care work and only the care work, but also even when you are specializing in care work in the market. I mean, you are a care worker who gets a wage, has disadvantages, basically, for the people. Care work is in no way a type of work that is as advantageous as average type of work in the society. However, the whole society needs care work to survive. At least care work for children, probably care work for sick people, and if possible, care work also for the elderly. So that dilemma is described in the second chapter, and we are getting close to the 15 minutes mark, so I'm ending the the part 2 here. We will see chapter 2 in more detail in part 3.